project leaders, Oriol Alvarez Trotta and Jorge Lombard, and their teams. All of you have done an excellent job, and your achievements are even more impressive when you consider the adverse circumstances introduced recently by the COVID-19 crisis that you have had to deal with. I thank you really for that. CEOSAT Ingenio epitomizes the excellent cooperation between ESA and its member states, Spain in this case. While the overall programmatic and financial responsibility is with CDTI, ESA was entrusted with the technical and contractual management of the program. Besides developing the system itself, the objective was also to enhance the capabilities of the Spanish space industry, and this has certainly been achieved with this project. Beyond the Spanish primes of the satellite, the instrument and the ground segment, almost the entire range of Spanish space companies has been involved. There are 17 of them. They have demonstrated their unique competencies, which are a precious and indispensable asset to European space activities. This program has been a step in a steady, continuous increase of industrial competencies for Earth observation in Spain, but also towards an increased role of Spain in the field of Earth observation overall. Spain has invested heavily in this field since the last ministerial meeting in Seville, also in the European Copernicus program. This is providing great return to the country in terms of industrial contracts, like the prime contractorship of the Sentinel expansion mission LSTM, just finalized and signed these days, but also in terms of benefit to users and value for the scientific community. As ESA's Director of Earth Observation Programs, I'm happy and proud of ESA being part of the CEOSAT Ingenio family, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful mission for the benefit of Spain, of Europe, and of the entire planet. Thank you very much.
So Stefan introduced us to one of the teams back there in the Mission Control Center. That was the Flight Directorate. But there are actually a number of different teams all sitting at different desks within what we call the fishbowl. It's that protected glass. And there are a couple of key people. There's the Range Operations Manager, but there's another one who is the Mission Director, or Chef de Mission in French. Today it's Cyril Ponroy. Cyril, c'est quoi votre rôle? Ça veut dire quoi être chef de mission?
What's your role, Cyril? What's a mission director?
Au profit des satellites, avec en interface d'un côté l'équipe lanceur et la base spatiale. Arianespace est un opérateur de lancement. Il signe des contrats de lancement avec des clients. Il signe un contrat avec un prime qui va fournir un lanceur, une fusée, et il a un contrat de support opération avec le CNES CSG pour la mise à disposition des ensembles de préparation des charges utiles. À ce titre-là, on manage la campagne au profit des clients.
Et le jour du lancement, le J0, c'est quoi votre rôle?
Au J0, on a d'un côté les satellites qui sont prêts au lancement sous la coiffe. Ils ont quelques activités à dérouler. D'un autre côté, on a l'équipe de lanceurs qui prépare la fusée pour le décollage. Et de l'autre, la base de lancement qui se prépare à dérouler les dernières opérations pour le décollage. Et donc notre rôle, c'est de coordonner ces trois entités au niveau de Jupiter 2.
Et nous sommes en confinement dans pas mal de pays d'Europe. C'est comment là-bas à Kourou?
Pour l'instant, heureusement, nous ne sommes pas encore confinés grâce à la fermeture des frontières, à la maîtrise des flux migratoires à travers la métropole. Pour l'instant, la situation est très stable. On se contente donc d'appliquer tous les gestes barrières au niveau du quotidien, au niveau des salles de réunion. Le port du masque est bien sûr obligatoire et avec la distanciation sociale et les gestes barrières, pour l'instant, on échappe au confinement.
Alors Cyril Ponroy, chef de mission, merci beaucoup et good luck for the launch.
Merci.
So another key person in mission control is the director of the Guyana Space Centre, and she is Marianne Clare, and she joins us now from the fishbowl. You can see the glass there, and you can see the VIPs. Hi, Marianne. At this point before launch, everybody's looking at the status panels. What's the latest, and what do they do?
Yes, good evening, everybody. So what you can see behind me is the red and green panel, which give information concerning the good health of the major subsystems which are necessary for the launch. In case of Vega, we can interrupt the launch countdown until H0 minus 8 seconds in case of problem. There is five types of families which are monitored through this panel. First of all, the launcher itself, of course. Secondly, the satellites, and also the radar and telemetry station, which are necessary to follow the trajectory and to give information on the behavior of the launcher during the flight. Fourth, we have safety means. In case of problem, we can send an order in order to destroy the launcher. And of course, until the end, we check that all the equipment necessary for this function are working properly. And finally, of course, the last but not the least, the METEO criteria. And you see today that there is a suspense with this criteria until the end of the chronology. So for the time being, this criteria is green. And it is very important because it is with this criteria that we check that in case of problem in the first part of the launch, there is no danger and no risk for the ground population. So you just have we just held the last key point before the launch, and now everything is green. So far so good. Every light are green here in Kourou.
That's great news. I'm very pleased to hear it. Thank you very much indeed, Marianne Clare. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Damien Gilles, who is the head of Space System Engineering here at Arianespace. Do come and join us, Damien. Thank you very much for being with us. So Damien is now going to be with us for the rest of the programme. And Damien, you've brought a model with you, I see, very kindly. What's this? What are we looking at?
This model stands for the upper part configuration for the flight of today. So you can see here we have the fairing, which is a white structure, under which you will find the two satellites of our mission. In upper position, you will find COSAT, which is the upper satellite, and it is mated on the dark structures that we call the Vespa. And inside this structure, you will find Taranis, our second co-passenger for today's mission.
Now we're coming up to the beginning of quite an important phase in the launch. It's called in the final countdown. It's called the synchronized sequence. Tell us about that.
The synchronized sequence is the end.
Attention pour le début de la séquence finale lanceur. Top. H0-4 minutes.
And there we have it. The Range Operations Manager has indeed launched the synchronized sequence there.
Yes, this is exactly what we heard. It's the beginning of the last step of the automated sequence, where the launcher will be completely autonomous at the end, and it includes several steps, such as loading the liftoff time into the onboard computers, loading the flight program software, and at the end, the launcher will be completely autonomous to perform the last operation just before liftoff.
Okay, so we've got quite a long mission ahead of us tonight. We've got, I think it's going to take us about just under 2 hours to deliver our satellites, isn't it? So let's have a little look at our mission, and maybe you can talk us through what's going to happen, Damien.
Exactly. Just after liftoff from Guyana, the first stage, called PAT, will start the mission with a flight roughly less than 2 minutes. Just after, we have the second and the third stages that we call Zefiro 23 and Zefiro 9 that will increase the launcher velocity thanks to the use of their own propellant consumption and separation of the stages. The fairing is jettisoned at the beginning of the Zefiro 9 flight. We have then the separation of the Zefiro 9 based on an acceleration criterion. And we have the first ignition of the AVUM, which is the upper stage, for around 6 minutes. It will allow us to inject the launch vehicle onto an intermediate orbit, during which the launch vehicle will be circularized thanks to the second ignition of the AVUM boost just prior to separation of the upper satellite, CEOSat Ingenio. After separation of CEOSat Ingenio, we will have the separation of the Vespa upper part a few minutes later, and then we will get prepared for the injection onto the next orbit with the help of the third AVUM boost, which will put the launcher onto another intermediate ballistic phase. At the end of this ballistic phase, we have a fourth AVUM boost that will allow us to circularize the orbit prior to injection and separation of our second passengers, Taranis. The mission is not ended yet for the launcher at this point of the time, and we will complete the mission from the launch vehicle point of view with the fifth AVUM boost, which allows us the control re-entry onto Earth.
There we go. So, yeah, thank you very much. There's quite a mission tonight and lots to look forward to. We have just heard from the Range Operations Manager that we are 1 minute to launch, and we are orbiting CEOSat Ingenio for Spain and the European Space Agency, and Taranis for the French Space Agency, CNES, and for the scientific community. We're going to sit back and watch now and wish best wishes to all the teams.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage P80 et décollage Vega 17, CEOSat Ingenio et Taranis. Propulsion est nominale.
Je suis de retour.
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux. Acquisition de la télémesure pour la station de Saint-Jean.
And they are off. CEOSat Ingenio and Taranis are on their way. Vega, flight number 17, is blazing a trail towards space over the night skies of the Amazon rainforest. And the Range Operations Manager is telling us that everything is going well and according to plan. We've broken the sound barrier, haven't we, Damien?
Exactly. After 30 seconds of flight, the launcher velocity gets above the velocity of the sound, Mach 1.
And the job of the first 3 stages is to get us away from the Earth.
Exactly. We take advantage of all the energy of the propellants that are stored on the 3 first boosters in order to get away from the Earth's gravity as fast as we can.
Because, of course, the Earth's gravity is what makes us stick to Earth, stick to our planet, but it also makes it quite difficult to leave it. And we can still see the launcher there, that dot in the sky, just going into the distance, deep into space now. This is the separation of the P-80, the first stage.
Exactly.
Et allumage Zefiro 23.
And you're getting the confirmations in your ear, Damien?
The confirmation has been given that the second stage was ignited and everything is nominal. Yeah.
And this is the beginning of the dogleg maneuver.
Tous les paramètres à bord sont
Coming
normaux.
up.
Yes, the dogleg maneuver is a change of the trajectory plane of the launcher that we perform just after the separation of PAT, and we name it dogleg because when you see the shape of the trajectory, it's like a dogleg.
It does what it says on the tin, as we say in English. So the Z is for Zephyro, which is actually the name of a wind, isn't it?
It's the name of a wind, and it's also the name of a Greek god, the god of west wind.
And you can see down at the bottom of the screen our altitude, our distance from the pad, and vitesse down at the bottom is, of course, the speed. And you can see the trajectory there. The cross is the actual position of the launch vehicle.
Par la station de Galliot.
So the fairing is what you were showing us just now, the top of the launch vehicle, and it's protecting our satellites from the rigors of the launch.
Yes, the fairing protects the satellite in different phases. First, during the ground phase, it allows the cavity in which the spacecraft are located to be monitored in specific temperatures. And during launch, first at liftoff, it protects them from the acoustic noise. And during the atmospheric flight, as we go very quickly through the atmospheres, it generates friction, and so it generates heat, and the fairing protects the satellite from this additional temperature.
And there's acoustic vibrations at launch are very loud, you can just imagine. So here we have separation now, that's what it looks like, of the next stage.
Yes, we had the separation of the second stage and the ignition of the
Allumage
third.
Zephyro 9.
And there we go, the fairing has now been jettisoned. And we have the confirmations there from the Range Operations Manager. We can see SEOSAT Ingenio for the first time at the front. And the other satellite, Taranis, is hidden underneath it. And the launcher is operated remotely, isn't it?
Exactly. And we got information because the launcher sends some signals towards the ground station network that are located around the flight path, and that allows us to follow the current status of the flight.
So we are going to see those ground stations now. We have, tell us about those tracking facilities.
Yes, we have several ground stations that are located all over the flight path. The two first ones are located in Guyana with Galliot and Saint-Jean-du-Maroni, which allows us to follow the booster phases. Then we will be in direct visibility of Bermuda, which will allow us to cover the beginning of the first AVOOM boost, and Saint-Hubert in Canada covers the end of the first AVOOM boost. The intervisibility periods between two stations are not always interleaved. This is what we call a telemetry hole, and this is something completely nominal because it occurs in a phase where we have no active phases from the launchers, and we have such foreseen hole between Saint-Hubert and New Norcia in Australia for this flight. From New Norcia, we will follow the second AVOOM boost and the separation of SEOSAT. Just after New Norcia, we have once again a telemetry gap as the launchers moves around the Earth. This second telemetry gap will reach its end when we will be in direct visibility from Galliot again, located in French Guiana. From Galliot, the launcher will send again the telemetry data that is transmitted back to CSG in real time for the main parameters and deferred time for the parameters that are to be studied after flight. We have a slight telemetry hole before being again in visibility from Bermuda and from Saint-Hubert, where we will complete the mission from the launcher.
Okay, so we are now 6 minutes and 17 seconds into our flight. We are traveling at a speed of nearly 8 kilometers per second, which is just phenomenal, really, when you think about it. He's telling us that everything is going well. And we have separation there of the Z9. And we're really entering the next phase now. The main propulsion phase of the launch is over. We're going into the next phase of the flight, which is to deliver our satellites. I believe we're getting ready to pick up the signal in Bermuda.
Yes, we are currently getting the signal from Bermuda, and Bermuda is located in the Caribbean island, as you have seen before on the maps. And this station is a kind of historical because it was already involved on Mercury programs for NASA and also in the Apollo lunar program. So it's a kind of historical location for space.
Now, just tell us about our orbits. Where are we? Where is the Avum upper stage going to take?
As we are on a mission where Earth observation is of utmost importance, we will inject our two satellites onto an orbit that we call...
Sorry, I just heard there we had acquisition in Bermuda while we were talking. Sorry to interrupt you.
So we will inject them onto sun-synchronous orbits. This is a kind of orbits where the satellite passes over the same point of Earth always at the same time. And this is why these kind of orbits are very important for Earth observation, because you have always the same illumination from the sun.
So we're coming up to the next point now, which is the switching on of the Avum upper stage. I call it Avum in English, and of course the French call it Avum. And this is what it looks like up there. It's the taxi driver. It delivers our satellites to their drop-off points in space. And it's really the next phase of the journey now, isn't it?
And now Avum has taken the wheel, if we can say, so it will propel our launch vehicle with the satellite up to their injection orbit. So for this mission, we will have 2 boosts before separating CEOSat and 2 other boosts before releasing Taranis.
And our 2 satellites, of course, have 2 project directors, and I've been talking to them earlier. Beatriz, this is a really important satellite for Spain, and you must feel incredibly proud as a Spanish woman.
Yes, good evening, Katie. As a Spanish, you're right. I'm extremely proud to participate to this mission because this is the first satellite that has been fully designed and manufactured by the Spanish industry through a consortium of the different companies of the space sector led by Airbus Defence and Spain. SEOSat Ingenio is also the 10th satellite that Arianespace has launched for Spain, but it is the first that could be for the Earth observation, and also the first that is using the smaller launch vehicle of our family, Vega. So while this, if we don't take into account the 6 other auxiliary payloads that we have also launched for Spain, and 3 of them in the previous Vega rideshare mission in September. So it is a great day for Spain, but also for France and for all the European countries that has participated to this mission.
Indeed, it is a great day for France, Fabrizio, but also from a scientific perspective, Taranis is important for all of us on Earth, isn't it?
Hi, Katie. Yes, you are right. Taranis, whose name, you know, comes from the Celtic god of thunder and lightning, but that's also the acronym for Tools for the Analysis of Radiation from Lightning and Sprites, is all French microsatellites designed, built and operated by CNES. Main mission is scientific one. In particular, the main mission of Taranis is to probe, investigate and probe the physics mechanism that are behind such storm phenomena, so-called TLE, transient luminous event, and TGF, terrestrial gamma ray flashes. But as you said before, the data recorded and delivered by the 8 payloads that are on board of Taranis will be used also for operational applications like climatology and the weather forecast.
And Beatriz, the satellites are travelling today on board the Vega launcher together, but they've actually travelled all the way to Kourou together, haven't they?
Yeah, yes, you're right. The 2 customers got in touch for sharing the transportation of the satellites. So they have arrived on the same plane here in French Guiana. And the collaboration between the 2 customers have continued all along the launch campaign, because as I said before, there has been a really great teamwork.
And I would just to add that these 2 satellites have been married since the beginning, since the signature of the contract. And now this honeymoon will be shortly ended because they will be separated in space.
Thank you very much indeed, and best of luck for the launch today, Beatriz and Fabrizio.
Thank you very much, Katie. Bye.
Well, it's a good separation. And of course, as we've been hearing, the Vega launcher is a very special member of the Ariane space family. She's the youngest of the 3 launch vehicles that are operated by Ariane Space. Marino Fragnito is the head of the business unit at Ariane Space and the Vega business unit, and he joins us now because we're going to just take a little section now, Marino, to talk more about Vega. So just tell us a little bit more about tonight's launch.
Yeah, hi, Kathy. So first of all, I have to say that I'm very happy to be here roughly 2 months after the VV16 flight, which has been, a very complex flight and great success with 53 satellites on board. We were in the middle of the COVID crisis, so it was very important for us to come back to launch in this period. And now, today, just after 2 months, a bit more than 2 months, we are here again with a very complex mission. So I think Fabrizio and Beatrice have already talked about tonight's launch. I liked very much what Fabrizio said about the separation of the satellites in flight, but I have to say that it's very important for me to point out that Ariane Space is able to build these very complex missions, like the one for SSMS, like the one that we're performing tonight for the benefit of the European institutions tonight. We have 2 satellites together. We have, as they have explained, we have built this mission since the beginning. We are married to satellites, so it's very complex to be able to conceive these missions thanks to this very versatile launcher that we have, capable of injecting the satellites in 2 different orbits at the same time. And we see that multiple launch and dual launch is becoming the standard for this launcher. So it's the standard for Ariane since a long time. It has been a standard for a long time, double launch. And now we're going more and more towards multiple launch approach, and with Vega C this will become even more and more the regular approach that we will use in order to optimize the launch cost for our customers. And so we'll share the same launcher. We'll have a great benefit for all the customers and the institutions which will come aboard.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Marino. It was really, really interesting. Joining us here in the studio is Daniel Neuenschwander, who's the Director of Space Transportation at the European Space Agency. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Daniel. I mean, as we were saying there, Europe is blessed with a family of launchers, aren't we, which can take virtually any satellites to virtually any orbit.
Yes, any payload to any orbit, but in addition to that, also from European territory. I think for autonomy of action in space for Europe, it is crucial that our institutional customers have the possibility also to launch from our own territory. Then today we have Vega, Ariane 5, Soyuz from CSG in operation, and tomorrow we will put into the market Vega C, Ariane 6, a new family, but with the same full range of performance. And last but not least, I would like to underline the support that member states give to Vega C, which is coming in soon, through the increased support with regard to Vega. We have nearly doubled the number of space through Ariane and Vega on the one side, and on the other side, also showing that Vega is the right vehicle with the right capabilities to address also new markets.
So the new vehicle, Vega C, is going to be a real game changer, isn't it?
For sure. Vega C being introduced mid-next year will, on the one side, increase its capability of launch of Vega, going from 1.5 tons to 2.3 tons, and also doubling the volume under the fairing, which is also a key aspect to address new markets. Then Vega C will also have a joint solid rocket motor, the P120C, together with Ariane 6, which of course lowers the costs in development and in production. And last but not least, Vega C will have the opportunity to launch ride shares. Marino just spoke about the last Vega launch, where we had a proof of concept of a new adapter allowing us to launch 53 satellites. This is now done. Vega C will be able to address this on a regular basis, and on top also new missions like Space Rider.
Well, tell us a little bit more about Space Rider.
Well, Space Rider is really a new first, because it's Europe entering a new area. We will have now the first reusable space transportation system for in-orbit servicing and also return from space. And this will allow to address and open up new perspectives, new markets. The spacecraft will have roughly the size of 2 minivans, stay in orbit for a couple of months, 2-3 months, and then come back safely on Earth, be refurbished and launched again.
That's really exciting, very, very exciting, and something to look forward to. So, Daniel, thank you very much indeed for joining us in the studio. So, we are going to go now to a film about French Guiana, because the Guiana Space Center is in French Guiana, which is in South America.
Trajectoire dégradée à partir du premier boost AVUM.
We are getting information from the Guiana Space Center that the trajectory is degraded on the launcher trajectory. So we're going to wait for information now, more information from the Guiana Space Center, and we're just going to bring our program to a pause for the moment. So you can keep your eyes on the Twitter feeds and the website, and we will come back to you as soon as we have more information. Je t'entends pas, Elodie. So we're coming back to us, the flight of VV17, Vega flight number 17, Seosat and Taranis, and we are just getting information, waiting for information now, because we have had information that there's been an issue with the telemetry, but we're waiting to get more now from the Guyana Space Centre. So while we wait, I just wanted to ask you, Damien, what is the sort of normal sequence of events in a situation like this? Because I'm guessing that the people will have to be doing all sorts of analysis and trying to find out what's happening.
At that moment, I think that the team are probably gathering all the available data in order to get an understanding of what's going on. And then we will wait for further information from Guyana Space Centre.
And of course, the Guyana Space Centre will come back to us as soon as they can bring us more information. And I think in the meantime, we will again point you...
Poursuite des activités BLA au profit de VV17. En attente d'informations complémentaires sur la situation bord. Que tous les moyens restent configurés.
Can you translate that for us, Damien?
It was a message from the range operation manager that was stating that from the ground side, all the operations are going on. It means that all the equipments are in waiting mode for a new analysis or new data coming from the launch vehicle side, and that they remain in a waiting mode, waiting for additional information coming from the launcher or additional acquisition coming from other means.
So let's just remind everybody of our two satellites on board. We have Seosat Ingenio, which is a Spanish satellite of the European Space Agency, and we have Taranis, which is a scientific satellite for France, for the scientific community, and for the CNES, which is the French Space Agency. Just a sort of a recap of events so far. We did have a red weather at the beginning, but that then resolved itself, the weather status panel, and we were able to launch on time, but we are now waiting for more information because
all the teams are probably working on now from different sites, from different entities, from the CNES side, from Arianespace, from Avio. In such a difficult moment, all the teams gather together to put all their efforts in order to try to understand and to get all the data on the table in order to get a clear status of what is going on.
So we will point you again towards the Twitter feeds, the Arianespace website, and we will just take another pause now in our program. Have we got more information? No. We will take another pause in our program and come back to you shortly when we have more information. Actually, one thing we can talk about, which is something that's been done, which is a really interesting subject, is the tests that have been done for Vega. We just to explain to everybody, we have the Vega upper stage has an adapter, doesn't it, yes, which you were telling us about.
Yeah, so for this flight, we had a specific adapter between Taranis and the launch vehicle. It is called a PAS 610S. So 610 is the diameter of the interface between the adapter and the satellite, which is roughly 610 millimeters. And due to the sensitivity of the Taranis spacecraft to the shock environment, specific tests have to be performed in order to demonstrate the compatibility of the satellite with the environment generated by the launcher. So the test had, there were several tests in several phases. The first phase was basically to check a kind of fit check, what we call a fit check, that the satellite can be mated completely properly onto its adapter from mechanical point of view and electrical point of view in order to check that there is no interferences and that all the signals can be acquired correctly between the spacecraft and the launcher. And also a second part of the step that was to demonstrate that the spacecraft can sustain the shock environment generated by the launcher, because during the flight we have several separation events. So the PAT separation, Zefiro 23 separation, Zefiro 9 separations, and the separation of the fairing, of course, and the separation of the spacecraft from the launcher itself. The most dimensioning events usually correspond to the separation of the fairing, the separation of the Zefiro 9, and the separation of the spacecraft from the launcher. So Arianespace, together with CNES, put in place dedicated tests in order to check that the spacecraft was compatible with this specific shock environment, and so could sustain all the separation events during the flight. This is an approach that we applied on some spacecraft when we need to demonstrate specifically that the spacecraft can sustain this level of shock. In the case of Taranis, it was due to the fact that Taranis was derivated from a Myriad platform, which was a platform developed by CNES a few years ago. And this platform was developed according to specifications that did not take into account the Vega user's manual at that time, because it was not yet available. So we had to perform, I would say, a delta qualification, delta verification for the Myriad platform specifically for Taranis.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of good tests going on there, and it's really interesting. And we're just hearing from I'm just hearing in my ear that we're hoping to hear from Stefan Israel shortly, the CEO of Arianespace. Here he is, I think, coming to us now. Hi, Stefan.
Yes, hello, Cathy.
Hi, Stefan. What's the latest?
Yes, so unfortunately, after nominal liftoff and after good ignition and separation of the three first stage and engines, we have observed a deviation of the trajectory after the ignition of the AVUM. So this deviation of trajectory is an anomaly. The altitude and the speed were not nominal, and we need now to wait for a new NORSA station acquisition to have more information to communicate on the final outcome of the mission. But for sure, this is an anomaly, and we now need to gather and to consolidate more information before coming back to you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed then for that, Stefan. So we will come back to you hopefully when we get more information after that. And so thank you very much for that, Stefan.
For sure, we will come back to you after having consolidated information. Thank you. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Okay, so that's the latest news then. So we are going to need to wait for the next acquisition. So sometimes I guess there can be all sorts of reasons for telemetry not being received properly. But so Stefan has just said we're going to wait now until we get the information. We're hoping to see whether or not we can get more information at the next pass and when we go into the new range of the new Norcia tracking station. So we are, well, the question is, are we going to carry on now here? And I think we will probably take a pause, a short while, and we'll wait for that information to come through. And Damien and I will come back to you once we get that information and once we go into the range of New Norcia, and Stefan as well. So we'll come back to you shortly. Keep your eye on the Twitter feeds and the Arianespace and ESA websites. See you shortly.